Hi, my name is Ethan Ray, and I'm a senior research analyst at 451 Research, part of S&P Global Energy Horizons, where I cover HR technology and employee experience. Joining me today is Brad Killinger, CEO of Sapience Workforce Intelligence. Brad, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Ethan.
Today, we're going to talk about workforce intelligence in the AI era, specifically how organizations can measure the capacity created by AI and build the objective methods they need to assess the ROI of their AI investments. That ROI question has become one of the most urgent problems in enterprise technology today. Organizations have been deploying AI tools at pace, and the business case often rests on projected productivity gains. Time saved, capacity freed up, workflows accelerated, but most organizations lack the measurement infrastructure to validate whether those gains are real, sustainable, or reaching the right parts of the workforce. Sapience's position at the intersection of workforce analytics and AI impact measurement puts it squarely at the center of the problem. So to kick things off today, Brad, why is measuring capacity the right frame for workforce intelligence right now?
Let me just kind of start and say, I believe that companies that are going to compete and survive in the AI economy are going to have a workforce intelligence layer in the same way that you wouldn't build a company today without a CRM system, without HRIS systems, so on and so forth. So why do I feel that way? I feel that way because, in my 30 years of work up until probably the last year or so, the world has told me, businesses said, we care about output. That's what matters. I believe in an AI world, the entire game is going to change and that capacity is going to become king. And so if you're an organization and you don't have visibility into what's happening with your capacity because of the AI investments, I don't know how long-term you're going to be able to survive. How are you going to be able to drive enablement-led productivity without understanding that data? How are you going to understand where capacity pockets exist in your business and how to try to fill it? How are you going to understand, what impact this is having to your suppliers and your contingent labor? And the list goes on and on. So, my belief is that in an AI economy, having the telemetry inside of your company that's going to allow you to understand what impact that AI is coming is going to be, table stakes in order to compete in the future.
I couldn't agree more about looking at capacity rather than typical performance or productivity as we have previously, because we've never had a tool or technology that's able to generate output outside of human employees. So really measuring the collective capacity of these new teams that we're putting together or transforming the workforce is going to be an imperative. And so when we're measuring AI impact, how does that measurement translate into ROI in a business context?
So I think it measures in a couple of different ways, and it really depends what a company is trying to achieve. And so, in my mind, there's two very distinct areas. There's in one side of the coin, you deploy AI, and it is going to free up a significant amount of capacity. So at a very kind of crude level, you could be a company that says, okay, we're going to take advantage of this capacity and we're going to improve our cost structure. That, by the way, is not the trend that we're seeing across our customer base. So, but it's certainly possible. And so you have to be thinking about that as you compete inside of a business, because what would happen if one of your competitors potentially, just took advantage of that available capacity and they were able to lower their pricing or be more efficient, et cetera. I think where most companies, and like I'm using, I'll put Sapience in there as a bucket, is we have widespread deployed AI to enhance our overall corporate performance, is we're thinking of capacity in a different way, which is not about trying to remove costs out of the business, but about how we can grow faster. How can we capture new markets? How can we do things faster? And so in both scenarios, you have to understand what impact AI is having. And what we are seeing is that almost all companies that we're working with are starting to see those benefits, but how they choose to try to realize that ROI is still very much up in the air in terms of what companies are going to do. And I could tell you easy anecdotal quick story is I was meeting about 4 months ago with a CHRO of a very large company who basically said, they'd spent over $100 million on a big AI HR driven project. And since that time, her gut feeling was that, most of the staff was working a couple hours a day. And I said, wow. So, and that just is a direct result that you can write job recs faster. There are a lot of the things that were occupying time in the past are now being done in very short order. And so my question to her was, well, what are you going to do with the capacity? And she kind of smiled and said, you know, I retire in 2 years, that will be the next person's problem. And so I say that tongue in cheek, but I think that you have a lot of that in the marketplace, that companies are going to have to really start understanding what capacity they have, and then what are they going to do with that capacity? Are they going to apply it towards new markets, towards growth, towards new product development, et cetera, or improving cost structure? And I think we're going to get there pretty quickly.
Super interesting anecdote to, just show how there is confusion and uncertainty about how AI is going to be deployed in organizations, and not measuring it and choosing to not look at the problem isn't helping anyone either. Our recent Voice of the Enterprise employee engagement survey, we found that 44% of employees have concerns about their job role changing over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think a lot of that stems from the uncertainty that organizations don't have a map to show to employees how capacity is going to be redeployed, how workflows are going to be augmented. So they're left with that uncertainty. I guess just to shift the conversation to other areas that Sapience tackles, what other interesting use cases do you see customers using your platform to address?
Where we are today, you know, our probably second largest use case is around contingent workforce management. Very important. It's become, you know, 30-ish% of the workforce for most Fortune 500 companies. So it's incredibly important. It's something that, if you, believe there's a transformation happening in your own workforce, is definitely also happening inside your service provider workforce. And so, helping companies understand, what is happening there, where are the opportunities for, what we call kind of this enablement-led productivity, in the exact same way as you do in your own employees, right? You need to understand how to measure it, understand where those gaps are, and then ultimately, how do you, coach, manage, improve, et cetera. And so, our data is proving extremely valuable. And so we've seen a massive uptick around companies trying to get visibility into an area that traditionally has not had very good visibility. We're also seeing, big use cases around what, I call software asset metering, but really helping companies, because in an AI world, software usage is shifting. So the tools that employees are, using and leveraging in order to successfully complete their day is rapidly changing. So being able to understand that in real time based upon the data is extremely important. And then we actually have a new offering coming to market soon. It's very similar to kind of current state value stream mapping, but we've had a lot of questions coming from our customers around, how can we help them, layer against large investments that they've already made inside it, for, like process mining and task mining and things like that, because, there's just so much data gap that exists when you're trying to just understand things based upon, actual system logs. And so our ability to be able to put together, or create a digital twin of, that log alongside of, the actual workday is something that's extremely powerful in the marketplace. And so that's something that, we'll be bringing into marketplace formally here in the next month or so, which we're very excited about.
That just only extends customers' visibility into those work processes, like you said, because we know that organizations are riddled with app and tool sprawl these days. And when you're redesigning these workflows, you want to look at what is not useful for our next evolution. Along that evolutionary pathway, customers have different analytics maturities. So, how does Sapiens plan to support customers at different levels of AI analytics maturity?
I can tell you right now kind of what we're going, and it's moving so quickly now. And so, originally, there was a keen interest from companies to kind of understand, step number one was just adoption. I mean, we made an investment, or is anybody using this, and so what does that look like? And I think, for now, you have pretty widespread adoption. I think from most of our research and data, we're seeing 80 to 90% adoption inside of enterprises. So that's extremely good. That kind of transitioned into, okay, now that we feel comfortable they're using it, can we create kind of, an audit layer? Because we need to make sure now that, that from a compliance perspective, they're using the approved AI tools. So even though, I believe that employees, have best intentions, these approved tools and processes are critical. And so, are really helping a lot of customers to create kind of visibility. I would say where we're at today now is starting to really help companies put together, I would say the input to output correlation, so they can start to see what life was like, kind of like pre-AI, what impact is AI having on, the tasks and how people, spend their work days, where are the opportunities that, for improvement, where are the opportunities to really take advantage. And so it becomes kind of this whole, enabled led productivity answer. And then our final piece is in the next year, we'll be introducing our platform, which will be able to monitor bots in the same way, that we're able to, do that same level of monitoring around, human capital. And so, I think it's going to be extremely critical for customers to understand, as bots start to assume actual workload inside of an operation, what is that interaction that begins to occur between, the humans and the machine, for lack of a better word. And so, we are rapidly building that telemetry right now that will be able to show that and help companies really, have a fact-based handle on what's happening there.
I think you touch on an important point there where if you aren't measuring your current work status and workflows, you're going to have no way to extrapolate that forward and compare to the productivity gains that are unlocked in different areas. So, really getting that early on understanding of what type of work is happening in your organization, who is doing what are the best performers in your organization doing, and how can you mirror that or free up ability because they're working on something. I think these are just going to become more and more pressing questions. And this area of the HR technology and AI measurement market, I think, is just going to increase in lockstep. So, can you speak a little bit about what the next 18 months looks like for Sapiens?
Let me just start on the AI side, is continuing to evolve our platform to help a company, best navigate this journey on their end. And so, to us, the next logical step is going to be, how we, produce, the insights and data around behavior, both the, humans plus bots we talked about. Secondly, for us, it's going to be, really, getting more into this kind of current state value stream mapping. And so we think that that's something that's going to be of tremendous value. And certainly, AI is disrupting that. And so having that sort of visibility and insight is going to be absolutely critical. And then the third part for us is our ongoing mission is, beyond just measuring AI, is how do we deploy AI inside of our own solution? Because, we've had a vision for a couple, probably 3 or 4 years now, which is, how do we create a platform that not just calls out either, where capacity exists, where problems might exist, where training opportunities exist, but actually starts to tie it in where we are a true, insights and recommendation platform to the market, so that, we are finding some ways between machine learning and between AI that our advancements we're going to make in the next 18 months, in our platform itself, of being able to take lots of very complicated data and breaking that down into easy bite-sized recommendations, so that managers can be more effective, so that employees can be more effective, so that senior leaders can be more effective based upon our data. That's where we're driving this whole machine. And so hopefully if we talked 18 months from now, we are continuing to grow quite rapidly, and our product has continued evolving with what we think are the what are going to be the needs in the marketplace.
And so, Brad, what I think I hear you saying is no measurement, no ROI. If you don't have visibility into these complex data questions that you're putting forth, you're really going to have no North Star to follow to know if these AI initiatives are paying off, if employees are utilizing the correct tools and in the right way, if your best performers can be replicated, like you said, with the digital twins, understanding what your best employees are doing in an organization, you're just really going to have no place to start. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that no measurement, no ROI narrative.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think that going through this kind of AI journey, it's involving all of us to step back and ask ourselves some tough questions and to really be truthful with ourselves. And so, look, the reality is employees are scared. They don't know what this means. But what I will tell you is not happening across our large customer base. You know that capacity is being freed up. You don't see anybody raising their hands and saying, hey, what used to take me 8 hours is now taking me 3 hours. And so this hidden capacity is going to sit there and is not benefiting anybody until ultimately, you know, you know, an employee can confront it, management can understand it, and you can start to, again, reprioritize the capacity, reprioritize the workload to understand what this new future work looks like. And it's a transformative journey. I can tell you, we're going through it right now at Sapience, and it's a really, really fascinating journey. But it is one, like, for us, we have chosen to put all of our effort not necessarily towards driving a cost takeout opportunity, but to accelerate growth opportunity. And it is magical what AI can do and what it can enable you to do is really, really transformational. But it's going to involve everybody, looking at it a little bit differently and being, open and honest with themselves, and addressing that head on. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, to watch this play out over the next 18 months. It's going to be really interesting. I think it's more important than ever to have those insights like you're talking about. And it's an exciting time to be in this area of the market with Sapience's technology really being able to serve as that North Star for customers and organizations. So thank you so much for joining us today, Brad, and sharing about Sapience and where you're headed.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Ethan.